Hello, welcome to today's astrology study group. And today we are going to go back to looking at some of the health or medical astrology, looking at ways that we can improve our health. And we'll look at the kind of a sequence of a few of the planets and how to pick these out. And we're going to do the same thing, but we'll get a bird's eye view of how we're going to go about doing this and then just go look at this. So basically this is kind of a little chart I just put together to help remind you of some things. But what we'll want to do, we'll examine the sun and see where it's at, of course. And if you know your birth time and you have your house system, you have the houses, that just makes it so much better because it gives you some more information. But you can still see where the sun is in a certain area. And it's going to bring us to the very first thing that we'll examine, because if you don't know your time, then you can still do have this that would apply. So we have to remember our rulerships. And getting back to you know we could get into sometime, like it was really called a dispositor, the ruler, so it kind of takes you away from just the sun itself. So for instance, I'm just going to use mine because I can speak first person about myself, and then not I know myself better about certain things, so I can give you some more insight on that. So if my sun is Aries, and that's going to tell me a certain thing, the sun. And then we see that, if you look at this, the planet, the rulership, the sun's ruler is Leo. And then we know that anything opposite of the ruler would be a detriment. So that's an easy one to remember. You just have to remember the rulers, and then you would know that the detriment, that's just not where the planet is strongest. It's the opposite side of the sun, you think about, or of its ruler, of its home. So it takes on a quality of just being in the opposition. So it's just like, look at the sun. The sun is strongest in that Leo season. It's that fixed fire. It's that where it shines. It's magnanimous, and it wants all the planets are revolving around it. And isn't that how Leo is? Leos want everything to be revolving around it. It's on stage, right? It's like, kind of mirrors that as above, so below kind of meaning there. But and then that's where, if we're talking about the sun, that's where it's, strong, and it's hot, and it's vital. And the opposite time of year is when it's the weakest. It's the middle of winter, where, where it's strongest, it's the middle of summer. So that would just make sense that it would not be as vital in the middle of winter. Now, there's one other little weird thing, exaltation and then fall. Well, those are opposites as well. And, a planet is exalted somewhere else. That's like where it's home away from home, where it feels pretty comfortable. But it's not its home. It just feels pretty comfortable. So it's like an honored guest. It's exalted. Some of these words, don't let them trip you up. But it is. It's sort of an honored guest. It feels good in that space, but it's still not its home. It's the best place. It's the second best place for, some place to be, for a planet to be. And then, of course, it's going to be opposite where its home away from home is where its fall is. It's just not comfortable. So it's a little different than the detriment, because the detriment is opposite from where its home is. The fall is just someplace where it's kind of, I think, sort of like off balance, maybe. At least the detriment, it knows that it's its opposite time or its opposite place. The fall is just, I think, strange. So the fall will always be opposite the exaltation. And I should have put a line here under Saturn. These are the common ones. And then I got the other ones. There's not a lot of total agreements on the outer planets, but I did find that in a book called Rulers of the Horoscope, Finding Your Way Through the Labyrinth by Alan Oken. and he also wrote Complete Astrology. And I haven't seen a whole lot on some of these, especially Pluto, but I thought I would just put it there just for your own sake. But I kind of like to use, I'm sort of Luditish, I guess. I like to use the traditional rulers first, and then I might go looking at the secondary rulers. So what does that mean? If 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 I'm an Aquarius, Aquarius sun, I might use Saturn as the traditional ruler, and then I might go for using Aquarius. I'm sorry, Uranus. So if I'm Aquarius sun, I'm going to look at Saturn, which is a traditional ruler, and then secondly, I'll go look at Uranus aspects. So Pluto, the same way. I would, look like if I were Scorpio, like say, here's like Mars and Scorpio. So I would tend to use, like if I had Scorpio or Mars, I would look at that rather than, the ruler of Scorpio being Mars rather than it being Pluto first. I would go Mars and then I would look at Pluto second. Okay, that's just something to add. Nonetheless, I don't want to get tripped up on that, but that's why I just wanted to give you a little background on that. So try to get, this is good to have. Again, to know some of these things. I think again, the exaltation in the fall gets a little bit more. You got to maybe have a chart or something if you don't do this all the time, which is fine. Anyway, back to me. No, but my sun is in Aries, and I just want to show you different. So the sun, you can then look and see if it's, if you're not, if you're Leo, it's not a ruler, and then if you're not Aquarius, it's not opposite. But then where's the other ones? So in this case, the sun happens to be exalted in Aries, so all Aries have an exalted sun, and then all Libras, the sun is in their fall. Well, this sort of it sort of biases things on one way, but that's how it is. So let's just think about that. So if we have an Aries sun and we have it in the seventh house, it's exalted by sign, but it's in a fall by placement. Inversely, we can have a Libra sun in the first house, and that would take on the exalted place, of the sun. So the sun could be there, or we can go to where the if the Libra sun was in the fifth house, then it would be stronger yet because it would be in the place of the sun's ruler. Okay, I'm going to say a couple more. I know it seems, once you get it or you see it, it seems obvious, but maybe for people maybe haven't heard this, I'm going to say a couple others. So let's look at the moon. If your moon is in Cancer, that's its natural home. It's just happy there. And if they have your moon in Capricorn, it's not so happy. It's not the best place for it. Just think, the moon, it's Cancer. It's that fluid and that nurturing and that watery side. And then if it's in Capricorn, Capricorn is dry and cold, so it's not the best place for the moon. Now the moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus, which is kind of similar. It's like homey, and it's like insecurity, and it's in a sister sign. It's in the same, I should say, it's in the same polarity, because the moon in Cancer is a water polarity, and then Taurus is an earth, and that earth and water are friends. They're both feminine and inner polarities. So moon not real happy there. And then it's okay. It's honored guest when it's in Taurus, and then when it's in Scorpio, it's this is kind of funny. It's in a feminine sign, which is kind of like Cancer, and it's in a water sign, but it's opposite here. It's like it's being under the microscope. It's being investigated and stung, and it's not like that. It's way more elusive, kind of. So it can take on that other quality. Okay, so placement. I just had to explain that. So if you have the moon in Scorpio in its fall, and you had it say in the fourth house, which is the natural house of Cancer, that would naturally strengthen it, right? Or if it were in the second house, the natural house of Taurus, that wouldn't be a bad place either. It would add some strength to it. Or if you had a Capricorn moon and it was in the fourth house or the second house, that would strengthen it. Conversely, if we had the moon in, say, well, if we had the moon was say it was in, let's just use its own sign. If the moon was in Cancer, it's its own sign, but then it was in the 10th house, which would be the Capricorn place, it would lessen it, it would weaken it, it wouldn't be as feel as good, it would be more stressed, put it that way. Or if you had the Cancer moon and it was in the 8th house, which would be the Scorpio house, the moon would kind of not be as happy either. So we could go through all of these. I'm not going to do that. It would take too much time, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. So when we're looking at a placement of something in your chart, and today we're just going to look at the sun, we want to first of all again see if you're Leo, you know it's the automatic ruler. If you're Aquarius, it's in its detriment. If you're an Aries sun, it's exalted, and if you're Libra, it's a fall. And then and nothing else, any of the other signs, it's neutral. So think about those places, those houses that each of those represents. Leo being the 5th house, naturally rules the 5th house. Aquarius naturally rules the 11th, Aries naturally the 1st, and Libra naturally the 7th. So you can go around and look and see if your sun is either strengthened by house, or sign, or weakened by house or sign. All right, so that's what this first part is there to help you do. And then, you can do that for all the other planets as well, which we'll kind of get there. But, those of you that jumping ahead, so that way we got one level. So tick, it's either maybe like if you have the sun, you're going to examine the quality of the sun. So maybe have strengthened, weakened, neutral. So, you can just kind of make little notes. It's like if your sun, it's not, say your sun was in, say your sun's in Capricorn, none of these in there. So that would be, it's sort of neutral. If the sun was not in the 5th house, the 11th, the 1st, or the 7th, then, then it's kind of neutral again. Whereas if it's, say it's in Capricorn in the 5th house, you would maybe add a little check of it being stronger. Or if it was the sun in Capricorn in the 1st house, you'd make it maybe a half a check. The exalted is not as strong, or you give it 2 checks if it's in the ruler. Just some way to evaluate a little bit. Maybe a minus if it's in its detriment, like if it's in the 11th house, or a half a minus, or you could do 2 minuses and then 1 minus if it's in, the 7th house of Libra, something like that. All right, so we're going to just look at the sun, look at its placement, and then just get a little feel for that. First thing, okay, and you know that the sun is your core vitality. It's your metabolism. It's if we're looking at it is a health chart, which we're always looking at the other way. So it's kind of fun to look at this other side, the health side. It's the basic vitality of your cells. It's what drives your engines of your cells. It's your basic vitality. Without the sun, we would not exist. I'll have to read a little bit by I'll get over here in a minute, but just while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to read a little bit from the book called Medical Astrology by Heinrich Daath, D-A-A-T-H, Heinrich. I'll get there in a second. But just the sun itself, it's, it's a couple of things. It heats you up. It's warming. It's where your vitality is. It drives your engines. It's the vital force of life. And on the other hand, it can get inflamed. You can have infections. It could be vitality problems, unvital energy or inconsistent energy or low energy. You could have a low expression of your ego, or a high expression of your ego. You got the sun in Leo in the fifth house. I think that's going to be a little louder in ego than if you had the sun in Aquarius in the 11th house. Just saying, um, what else did I want to tell you about that? So we want to look at that, whether the being can stand up for themselves, not only in life, but is, resistance to infection, resistance to, you check your stamina. How well can you push the envelope? Do you have to pay real close attention to your health? Dot your I's and cross your T's, or can you be a little wild and reckless and still be okay? That's kind of the basic vitality of a person. I'll watch somebody put away, certain kinds of food and the amounts of it, and I'm going, oh my God, I would be sick and on the floor for days if I ate that. That person's fine. So, that we're all different on some of those levels. Okay, a couple other things. Some also the sun is associated with the heart disorders. I would like to quantify that. It's such a like, oh, the heart. Well, there's so many parts of the heart. You've got the heart itself is a proteinaceous, it's a big muscle. So you need to have quality protein in your diet and enough protein. And you need to be able to have strong digestion to assimilate protein. So now we're involving another system, but I want to just kind of stay on this and quantify this for you. So if we break that down, we want to look at, are you providing enough substance? First of all, structure, protein, so your body can make muscles and make heart tissue. Secondly, we want to support, the heart beats, right? It moves blood. It's a pacemaker. It's an electrical system, but it moves blood, and it has to beat, and then it moves the blood through different areas, through valves. And those valves have to open and close, and they have to open completely and close completely. And when they don't, we have problems. A big problem with valves in the heart are what I've found over the years, a couple big things: the B vitamins in the E vitamins, the E family. And I found Standard Process Labs a long time ago actually divided both of those up, because there's different fractions of the B group. There's the B and the G, they called it. One was water soluble, one was alcohol soluble, different parts of the B complex. But the tonicity of the valves sometimes varied if it was strong, on the atrial side, and weak on the ventricular side. That indicated one thing, and vice versa. But what it boils down to, without getting to a lecture on the biochemistry of the heart, is the B complex, the whole B complex family. And what Standard Process was found out a long time ago was a lot of the vitamins that started to come out. Well, they based theirs on food. They were a company that they grew their own. They had their own farms. They grew their own food. They extracted their own, their own stuff. It was mainly food sources. If you look at Standard Process Labs, they were a real early company. They were out there with Shackley and some of those early ones. So you still find those formulas, and I love Standard Process. Nonetheless, since then, there's been a lot of other vitamin, mineral, research and companies and all that. But then there was a lot of synthetic vitamins. People started to learn how to synthesize vitamins and not have them from whole food sources. So we started to have, in my opinion, and there's been a lot of research on that, is, you create deficiencies based on, the deficiencies within the vitamin complex themselves. For instance, vitamin C, I just got to rag on that for a moment. What we know, or what we're being told is vitamin C, is not vitamin C. It's ascorbic acid 99% of the time. Unless you have one that says from Whole Foods, and you see camu and acerola cherry and peppers and tomatoes and sweet pepper, and papaya and all kinds of food sources, it's not the whole vitamin C complex, and you're only getting a very acidic portion of that called ascorbic acid. All right, nonetheless, back to the heart. We need the whole B complex, and then the E factors, because that also regulates the proper opening. One regulates opening more, and the other regulates closing more of those valves. And then again, we have valves from the fresh blood, and then valves to move the old stale oxygenated blood. Both those sides, they all got to work right. So those are very, very important. So having the whole complex B, having the whole complex E. But there was a couple of things that used to take listen to the pulses of the heart and the valves, and they were, you could figure that out. An endocardiogram. Is that what it is? Endocardiograph? Yeah, I think that's what it was called. Anyway, magnesium is huge in the heart as well. If the heart muscle doesn't have enough magnesium, it can't relax, and it's always like tacking out, tachycardia. What do we got? Fibrillation. Those are common symptoms that can be really solved by the proper nutrition, especially magnesium, the right forms. You can't just go take like magnesium oxide or magnesium citrate and just have it work. You need to have the right forms. Okay, just have to say that because this is very important. When we throw out something, we talk about medical astrology, and you throw out something like, oh yeah, the sun rules the heart, without quantifying it and breaking it down a little bit more. All that being said, this is part of how we strengthen the heart. But the sun also rules the right eye in male and the left eye in female. Did I say that right? Left eye, yeah, because that's the male side. Left eye, or the right eye in the male, yeah, and the left eye in the female. Left eye is the feminine side, and that's like the moon is the other way around. The moon rules the right eye in the female and the left eye in the male. Okay, so there's more to that, and there's the different anatomy. We have also the middle back, the back and spinal problems, which around the heart. What else is there? Those are the big ones. Okay, so I just wanted to give you that as far as the heart. And when we look at something, I don't want to just throw out a term without giving you something a little bit more to sink your teeth in, because we're not going to solve problems if we just throw that out and scare people. That's what I don't want to do. So what do we mean by that? So if we have, okay, first now we're looking at the rulerships of your sun. So let's just take, for instance, we got an Aquarius sun in the 7th house. Okay, so we've got, or we can say we've got a Libra sun in the 11th house or anything like that. So, okay, all right. So we got like a couple strikes there. Now we got that happening. Now, the next thing we might want to look at is we just talked about the placement in the houses, and that's what I just talked about. And the next thing is it's strength by element. And according to the guy Heinrich Dahl, he says that the sun is strongest in the fire element, which would make sense because its home is in Leo and it's exalted in Aries. So that would, like, well, 2 out of 3, we claimed. So, and that's outward, that's masculine, positive, outward, that would radiating, that would only make sense for the sun. And then its sister sign, by polarity, it would then be next strongest in an air sign. And that's kind of interesting, because that would help the Libra or the Aquarian sun. We've got both of them in air signs. So that's, it gives it a plus by element. So not all hope is lost there. Okay. And then the next strongest is water. We move into the feminine elements because that's, now the feminine element, that's opposite of the sun. So that's what only makes sense. Water, and then earth, according to him. Heinrich. And the next thing we would then look at, we're assessing all this, is any aspects to the sun. And we're going to look at, our conjunction, our opposition, and then a conjunction of something. It could be, and we're going to give it an orb. I put an orb of influence here. I should have put it on that side. That's actually what it means. It's powerful and it's intense. And it could be, if you have Saturn next to your sun, it's going to be different than if you have Mars next to your sun. If we have Saturn there, the influence will be colder and drier. But it may be good if you're Pisces and have a lot of watery unstructuredness. So the Saturn might help you out. So it's not necessarily bad if you think of there's a malefic there. But nonetheless, a conjunction would be intense. Now, in opposition, you're going to be, it's tension as well. Um, it's some kind of a tension, and it's also awareness, because the other side gives you awareness, at least like of yourself. Then you at least see, okay, I love summer, I'm in the summer, and then over there is winter. Oh, I see, that's cold, that's opposite. Ooh. So it helps you to get some awareness. A trine, anything trining the sun, will bring it more harmony, bring it more flow, because it will probably be a sister sign. Not always, because if you get something near the beginning or end of a degree, you've got an orb there of 7 degrees, so it could be an out of sign trine. And out of sign trine. It sounds like a cool song. um, so these rules are not 100%. They're just giving you something to go on. And then the same, it can works all of it that way too. It's like your opposition could be the same thing. Anything that's on the beginning or end of a sign, you could have an out of sign aspect. All right, so the square is definitely an obstacle and a challenge. Those are just no way around it. It's a hard right or left hand turn from how something is going. But this is where we kind of have kind of always thought about this. And the way I try to help myself out with squares when squares are happening is say, well, it's the same quality. I don't know if that's always good, but it's like, well, there's something in common. Excuse me. Okay, the next one is a sextile, which is our half of our trine. And that represents opportunity. It's on its way. It's going to be the same polarity, where the trine will be also the same element and polarity. You think about that. Are they all? Yeah. Yeah. So you've got that in common, and then we're noticing that the orb is lessening a little bit. We're tightening a little bit. Semi-square friction. It's just kind of like eh. We could have put the quincunx. We could have put the semi-sextile too is in that, so you can note that as well. But that's just kind of adjustment, irritating, discord, and I don't know which astrologer I've read said it, probably several, but it's better it's better to have an aspect than not. I think definitely with the sun, it's got to be connected into something, even if it's a square or an opposition. Then you still even though something might be square, it's still building, it's still structuring, it's still causes you to move and act. Sometimes the trine, although it seems like this is wonderful, trines can be lazy, and squares can be motivating. If you don't get motivated to like get up and do something about something, you're going to miss out on the greatest work of your life because you were too comfortable. You didn't do it. So that's the other side of that. So we got to kind of look at this holistically. All right. The sun's meaning, health, meaning, and significance. We went through that a little bit, like what part of the body, and how that is manifesting. We said, the heart, we got circulation, we got the valves, we got the mid back, the circulation, basically. Eyes, those are just some of the few. We went through some of these before, and I think in earlier videos you can look at the parts of the body. All right, and then sun action and disease, and we mentioned that it could be inflaming or infecting or fever or energy or heart or vitality. And then the advanced analysis, once we kind of get all that down, we would look at parallels and midpoints. Parallels are basically there's another motion kind of up and down. I want to say up and down is kind of a weird way to say it. It's just another, it's like an XYZ axis. It's like another axis that can be affected. In addition to the sun being, say, like two signs are conjunct, but they may not be in the same declination. They may be, not parallel, or they might be parallel. So that would just add, because they're not just perfectly straight on that equatorial plane. They can move kind of north and south, and they do. And that's what that's all about. And then the other one is midpoints. So you might see, like, what if your sun was in the midpoint of Mars and Pluto? Like right smack dab in the middle of those two. Wouldn't that be interesting? So those two malefics, and like your sun is right in the middle of those, or two benefics, or any two. It's like any two planets, your sun could be in the midpoint of those, or any planet could be in the midpoint of anything. That's why I started looking at midpoints. But that's, a stress point. That's going to be kind of right in the middle. It's got to resolve or be, it's got to report to one thing on this side and another thing on that side. All right, so that's a little bit about that. And then let's just look at, let's see, let's share a new one. Yeah, what's this one? Okay, I think you see mine. Let me just make it a little bigger. Boop. Okay, so you'll see the sun up here in the 9th house, close to the midheaven. And you see, we already said that it's in Aries, so we know that it's exalted. And it's, so we'll see that. And then we see that it's in the 9th house, and we go, oh, that's the house of Sagittarius. So it's exalted and it's in another fire house. So I think that would strengthen the vitality of that sun. And then also Mars is nearby. Mars nearby kind of adds vitality as well, because it's just, it just does. It's that type of stimulating planet. So it's close by. So it's adding a little vitality. But also, I just have to say this, it's adding a lot of heat. Mars, in Aries, Sun in Aries, both of them in the 9th house. And then also you see the rising sign of Leo. And then we look at that because then we go, what rules Leo? We say the sun, and we go, oh, so that ties the sun into the ascendant, and it kind of makes the sun, gives you another fire parallel. So if I'm looking at this person and doing a health analysis, there's a situation here with heat or overstimulation or a lot of energy. So I would have to say this changes throughout somebody's life. So for me, in my life, earlier on, I didn't get hot until later on. But I was always doing so much. I would almost be like, I could never catch up. I always had so much to do. And then because I felt like I had so much to do, I don't know if I did some things really well. It seems like sometimes I just moved through something because I had so much on my plate. But I felt like my life at that time, I had to do that to keep things moving. So there was that vitality being stimulated in my earlier life. As I got older and you start getting into some, female, menopause area times where your hormones change and you can get hot. Well, that definitely lent that to me. I got hot fast, when I went through menopause, and I got very hot. It took a while, and I'm way past it, but and I actually, because I feel I didn't have children, I went through menopause early. But I also supported myself with a lot of nutrition, but I still overheat. I do hot baths and I drink coffee, only a cup a day, but still that's warm, and I live in a hot climate. So those are all things that aggravate the heat. And it's easy for me to get overheated because I have a lot of energy, and I was like, oh, I got to go do that plant outside now. It's 2 p.m. So I tend to do things that heat my body up. So to keep that in balance, I have learned to cool myself down. I have to drink cooler beverages. I try not to drink cold beverages around when I eat, because I don't want to retard the blood coming into my stomach and helping me digest. But in between, or if I get hot, I would just like, well, I just need to go get some cold water, some cool water or something like that. And it's good. And I love hot food. I love spicy food. I love hot peppers. So of course it's going to aggravate, people like the things that make them worse, so it's going to aggravate the heat. So definitely in the summer, and I live in a hot climate. I live in Florida. All of this is making the heat situation in my body worse. If I lived in Alaska, I'd probably be fine. Well, not really, but you know what I'm saying? On that level, it would be different. But I have to definitely watch that. When come into the summertime, I have to like give up the hot sauce. or not have it on everything every day. To watch all the spicy food, the things that heat my body up. Um, so that's what I would have to say. I have to, I've kept my heart in good condition, make sure I digest proteins, I take a good quality, full spectrum B complex. Actually, I like the one from Country Life because they have the all the active B forms and it's very assimilable. Um, and then a good quality vitamin E, not made from soy. That's non-GMO. There's a couple I found. One, Dr. Wong's Dry E. I also like what's the one? Unique E by AC Grace. And then there's another one I just found. I can't remember the company, but it's from an organic, non-GMO source, sunflower. I can't. It's fairly new to me. Sunflower source from a vitamin E. But anyway, that all keeps, I think, my heart in better shape, and I just have to watch how much heat I get into. Okay, so that being said, you have to look at where, is something being overstimulated? Is it being understimulated? Is it not enough? Like, what if my sun was in, like a colder house, like in the 11th house, or, you know, in a detriment, in the 7th house, then that would definitely change things. So look at those things in your house, in your chart, the house, how it is, and think about that. Like, here we're talking about heat and energy metabolism, and you see all the Aries and the fires. So you see that would, in this chart, you would think this is going to overstimulate this. It's already hot, and this is going to make it hotter or more overstimulated. So I want to make sure that I'm supporting that system or whoever this is. Okay. Then we look at aspects. Okay. So aspects, well, we got Mars sitting close by. It's like 10 degrees. I think that was the max of our orb. So Mars is a far conjunct. It's really not a close conjunct, but it's like a wide one. And then Jupiter's there. It's still wide. The sun's kind of in the middle. So that still influences it. Chiron is semi-sextile. Not a whole lot. The sun isn't really connected to a lot of stuff. It is the ruler of the ascendant, but then there's Neptune over there in Scorpio. That's the closest probably degree, and it's an inconjunct to the sun. So, it's tying that in. So I'm glad that I have an aspect on it, but then that's going to add in some kind of a, it's here in the 4th house. I would warrant something, maybe toxins, be Scorpio, Neptune, just try to watch out for things, poisons, toxins, make sure that maybe you detox regularly, which I do. So that would warrant of that. I'm not afraid to do enemas and cleanse my body, because that's showing that toxins could put a strain on that system, because that's, the only aspect here other than a wide conjunct to Mars. I think, well, I don't say the only, but it's the closest one. We got another sort of inconjunct here. If we go Mars, 16 degrees over to Pluto. So that would kind of indicate more health. It's like in, Pluto, 2nd house, health. Pluto's also can be toxins or things. Regenerating, but this is in health, but it's still another, so it's a 4-degree off inconjunct. So you're looking at that. All right, those are the big ones that I can see, angles to the sun. If we were going to look up parallels, I'd have to go look that up. I can go look up parallels for that day to see. I would want to see those, kind of maybe all planets, but definitely those, to see what's parallel to the sun. That could tell me a lot. And then midpoints, you can do the midpoint trees, and then it would just do everything. So then I would just go look, do midpoints. You run midpoints on everything. We'll have to do that sometime, but it basically just calculates all the midpoints of everything in somebody's chart. And then you would just go look at kind of like, what can I give you an answer? Something like this. Like, well, the sun is here. It's almost the midpoint of Mars and Jupiter here. It's like, it's 10 degrees away from Mars, and it's 12 degrees away from Jupiter. So if it's almost at, my sun's almost at 17. So let's just pretend it's 17. That would be almost, it would be then 11 and like 11, if I'm doing my math right. Yep. That would be like perfect. So the sun is almost the exact midpoint of these two planets. So you can kind of, run those around or just kind of look, and then do the math on either side, but you may not catch them all that way, but you can still kind of look and see, at least today, looking at your sun, looking at the midpoints of that, seeing if it's, midpoint of anything. It's best to do the midpoint things. And I think that Astro Seek, I think we looked at, I haven't looked for midpoints on that because I have Solar Fire and Sirius software, but they may do that on there. So just check that out, your midpoint trees. Anyway, I think that's a good start for today to assess the situation of your sun and, see if it's, again, I'm just going to review real quick where it's at, is it in a good, how many of those things are supporting it and giving it more strength, and how many are kind of making it more weak, weakening the vitality. So you might see why you get tired if you get taxed, or you never, or like this person, never had a whole lot of energy anyway. It's like, well, that makes sense. Like, well, they're a Leo, but yeah, but it's in the 11th house and it's got a square from this and it's got a, in conjunct to that. And then this is, so you can then see that's like, oh, okay, this didn't work out real well here. So, what else did I want to tell you about? I mentioned the book by Doth. A couple of things. He talks a little about, what did I want to tell you? One more thing, and I'll wrap it up for this today. I think, well, actually, that's quite a bit. I'll just get into another whole topic. So just a couple of books for you. That one, the medical astrology, also, what's her name? Diane Kramer. She has a lot of good stuff on medical astrology. I think we've mentioned a couple of things from her. All right, well, that wraps that up today. And I know it was a little bit longer, but I wanted to give you a little bit of background. And then the next time, when we dive into some of the other planets, you'll have the background already. So see you all next week. And I will put that, I think I will put that little chart. I think I can post it in the text of the video. Yeah, I think I'll do that. All right, have a good week, and thanks for listening. Bye for now.